Okay, we're going to go live. Here we are. Thanks for coming. Got a couple people in the audience. We probably we heard out there that we need a bigger crowd, so we're trying to advertise this. Tuesdays at noon, first Tuesday of every month. Let's, if you can make it down to council chambers here for the update, but if not, you can tune in and watch it on Channel 6. So we've had quite a busy past month here trying to get things ready for winter, but we're going to start, we're going to talk a little bit about where we left things over the winter, but before that, let's jump in. Mark, maybe give us an update on some things that are happening this week. So kind of the 5th, 6th, and 7th here, we've got a lot of stuff going on the roadways and some traffic impacts, correct?
Right. The biggest traffic impact will probably be on Highway 63 at the box culvert in Wisconsin. They're going to be flagging as they bring in the precast segments of that box culvert. So you'll see some flagging on Wednesday and Thursday there between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. Then on Thursday, they're going to be flagging as for putting up some mast arms at Plum Street and 3rd and Plum, yeah, that's right.
Yep.
3rd and Plum.
On 58 there, yeah.
58, right. And then there'll be some flagging as they do some backfilling on the between the north and south abutments there for the 33 and 34 bridge. So we'll see some flagging as they do that backfilling.
And when you say 33 and 34 bridges, those are the bridges that are inland, that are on the Minnesota side. They're
one would be the south abutment of the river bridge, and then
yep.
the north abutment of the bridge over 61.
Over 61, correct, yep. So and the lane restrictions, as looking at the schedule today when we met, right now we're on 61, we're one lane in each direction, and that looks like it's going to go through December with that setup, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. And then it did sound like at one time that maybe by the first part of January that can be lifted and we can go back to a two-lane configuration in each direction.
Right, and I think they may be sliding the barrels off the road at night.
Okay.
At least for the southbound piece on 61. The northbound piece has to stay out until at least we get that rockfall cleaned up by Barn Bluff there. And
then it's good you brought that up, that rockfall there right at the button hook where Barn Bluff had a sloughing of rock. I heard that's going to get cleaned up, and then those barriers that are set out there
they will get removed once that rockfall is cleaned up. And
kind of clean up that turning movement too. I know the bigger trucks were kind of having to come around that median nose with those barriers sitting out because of the rocks that had slid down and onto the roadway. So we're looking at getting that done here in the coming weeks. So
yeah, that should get cleaned up, I believe, next week.
Okay.
Mid next week.
And the mast arms that you talked about putting up at 3rd and Plum on 58 there, those are directional mast arms. Is that what that for directional signage and stuff like that?
And so there's lights on them too.
And lighting as well. Yeah. So I wanted to go over that because just to refresh everyone's memory on this, that will continue to be just a all-way stop condition at 3rd and Plum Street there. I might have said Bush, but 3rd and Plum. So those mast arms are not for a signal system. We don't have a signal going back in at this time. So, and it seems to be working, fine as a all-way stop. Granted, we do have 3rd Street is not open right now, and but I think it's been working fine, and we'll that's going to be the condition it's going to be when we're done with the project. So. With that, maybe we should talk about kind of how we left things. I know last meeting we had in November, we really were needing some decent weather to try to get done what we wanted to get done, which was curb and gutter, and then follow up with paving, and we really ran out of time on it.
Right, so we didn't get a whole lot of that done.
We did not get the curb and gutter in, so that lended itself to temporary paving is what we have out there. So the Potter Street intersection at 3rd is open with temporary paving, which will be removed and the curb and gutters put in and built properly. Bluff Street from 4th back to the Red Wing Shoe parking lot is also temporary paved with bituminous curb directing water to some of the catch basins back there. But of course, that's not the state it's going to be left in when the project's done. We got to get in there and do the final, remove that and do the final work on those roads. And then we also ran out of time on getting 3rd Street done between Potter Street and Plum Street. So What you see on Third is going to sit that way for the winter. We've worked with the businesses. We've added some directional signage, like for Knutson Carmel's, to get to their direction to their business, and then also talked with the owner at the Marie's restaurant, that building, the old Armory, and expanded their parking lot and did some things to give them some room during the winter on their parking lot. We've discussed that with the owner there, and it's not ideal the way things got left there, but that's what we ran into with the utilities dragging on throughout the summer. So
kind of a poor fall for concrete and paving and all.
We're finishing things up. Yep. Yeah. So maybe you want to talk about a little bit of the other parts of the project that are happening. Good progress on Pier 1 with the Minnesota side pier and the retaining walls, and kind of go over that box culvert stuff. And
yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the box culvert, they're going to start setting that tomorrow and should finish up on Thursday, at least on a portion of it. The other half will get finished up sometime later, hopefully later next year, later towards fall.
Okay.
Pier 1 for, I'm sorry, let's go to Pier 2. Pier 2, they plan to pour the footing there later this week. Pier 1, they've poured the plinth, and they hope to have a column pour, I believe, sometime early next week.
So that's the formwork that you see sticking up out of the ground is for their actual column pour.
Right.
Coming out of so they've actually started on Pier 2 first, which is the Wisconsin side pier, but then now has made probably more progress on Pier 1. They've kind of jumped over and got a little bit further along on that. Is that to try to line them up with their launching, where they're going to push the
I think
the
that
tub
just,
girders?
everything just came together better for them to start working at Pier 1 than Pier 2. Yeah,
Okay.
The excavation they had to do, the concrete removal and that.
Yeah, and as we met this morning, Mark and myself and others on the project, we have a coordination because we're doing a levee park improvement project this winter as well with a levee wall extension, and this the contractor being further along on Pier 1 helps us coordinate their access and getting their materials in while we're trying to build something. So I'm glad to see that they made good progress on Pier 1 this early winter, late fall. So
We are too.
yeah, I know there was a push for that, and looking at schedules that you got to have those main piers set before you do anything getting across the river. So
Right.
yep. Okay, maybe a little bit more on the walls and so forth. And
Yeah, I think they're going to just keep working on some of the walls around the bridge over Highway 61 there and the bridge into the Red Wing Shoe parking lot.
okay,
Seems like things are slowing down a little bit for winter here.
okay. So what for the winter? There's no more. Is that right? There's no more deck being poured. They'll wait until warmer weather
We'll
to.
wait for spring.
Okay, because it's just too expensive to try to tent and heat everything to
Right.
do that concrete properly. Okay. But they can keep working on the piers and that type of work
Right, they still have to keep that warm, but that's a little easier for them to do that kind of work.
rather than that spread out deck where it's a
Right.
lot more to try to keep that warm. So okay. Yeah. I guess maybe we could take a look at a few of your photos you got, Mark, and then
I
we can
just have a few.
get any questions we might have.
So they can still pour the concrete for the piers, but, because they can close your hydrant, is that?
Yeah.
So you'll tent the copper dam or something?
Yeah, Patty had a question about pouring the concrete in the winter on the piers. It's a little easier to heat and keep that area warm for what they need to do rather than the deck pours and the deck, Mark, is not probably the controlling operation right now,
No,
schedule-wise.
No, it's the piers.
It's the piers, so that's where they want to concentrate on.
Set before the river season opens.
Yeah, okay.
And the other thing is too that the pours they have at the piers are a larger volume, I guess, or I should say a larger mass, whereas the deck is long and very thin, so it loses its heat rapidly, where the piers and the footings and that are very large mass and they will retain heat, and actually we need to get them cooler than they probably are in the center. We have to kind of maintain some temperatures there.
Okay. Got one more question before we go to some photos.
Do these have to be continuous pours when they start a section?
No, there's construction done.
So there was a question on the columns whether they had to be continuous pours, but they can they can do construction joints, pour up to a certain point, and then continue. Yep. Good question.
So this picture is looking into Pier 1 on the Minnesota side, and that is after the drilled shafts are done. You can see the rebar coming up out of the drilled shafts. So,
And those shafts are how far down on the Minnesota side again, Mark? 60-some feet? Or
I think they were 52 feet down.
52, okay.
And let's see if I can get the next picture. So this is a picture from inside the cofferdam at Pier 2, looking up. This cofferdam has had the seal poured and the leveling poured on top of that seal just to make everything kind of smooth and flat in there.
So that concrete floor there, Mark, is that roughly at river bottom level right there? Are we a little higher than river bottom when they poured the seal?
That's a good question. I'm not exactly sure how high that
It's
is.
pretty close though, isn't it?
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah. So really, basically, the river water is just flowing right around that cofferdam there, and you're down under the water right there, under the water level anyway, to do the work.
And that's just a shot looking back at Pier 1 there as they're tying some of the rebar. This is a picture of the span in Wisconsin prior to pouring the deck. You can see all the rebar that's in place.
There's a lot of steel in there for that deck.
Stainless steel rebar in there.
Yeah, a lot of stainless steel, you said?
Yeah, that's all stainless steel.
All stainless steel,
All deck
okay.
is stainless steel, so fairly expensive, but it should have a longer life. And that's after the deck was poured, that's how it was insulated, I guess you could call it. It's just plastic sheeting, but they have furnaces in there, or actually up on, sitting on the north abutment there, blowing heat into it, and they found that actually didn't work as well as they had thought it would. So they brought in what they call ground heaters, which are basically hot water that's pumped through long hoses, and they wrap those, they just run those along the deck and loop it around to keep it warm.
So in this case here, this, of course, the weather looks decent, but it was a cooler day, so they did still have to heat it, so a cool fall
They're
day.
required to maintain 60 degrees, maintain the concrete temperature of at least 60 degrees during the curing period.
Okay.
And that's just a shot looking down into one of the drilled shafts prior to pouring the concrete.
Is this on the Minnesota drilled shaft, probably and those are the two, there's two drilled shafts on the Minnesota side, 12-foot diameter ones?
10 foot.
Or 10 foot?
Did
I got a
I read where
question.
they actually did a test one before they did these actual shafts?
Yeah, I'll let Mark explain that. I'm going to repeat the question. We had a question about, was there a test drilled shaft done? Yeah.
Yeah, there was. That was prior to doing any work, and I believe that was done last winter. They called it a technique shaft to prove that their process worked for pouring the shaft.
Did they come up with anything that was different than they expected, or? You know?
I'm not really sure because I wasn't here at that time.
I think there was some things that they had with temperatures and that they had to change how they, I remember Terry, the previous project manager before Mark, talking about them with the monitors and making sure that the temperatures were right and things. So I do know that they learned some stuff from that, and the contractor is paid to do that technique shaft, but then it puts them into the right to build the permanent ones. They know how to do it and know what how to
no
pour
mistakes
it
when you're actually doing your permanent work.
when you're doing your permanent one. Yep, and you're pumping that concrete down that hole right there, a long ways down. Yep.
So, and yeah, on the left here you can see that I believe these are the wire sensors that check the temperatures of the concrete, and that as it's curing out.
Okay.
They have to check the middle as well, Mark?
Yes. I believe so.
So they've got something they'll drill in the middle too.
It's actually just placed down in the middle, yeah, some of the rebar.
Yep. Yep. There's sensors placed in the middle. The question was as well. So.
That's all I had for pictures right
Okay.
now. Didn't really do any of the temporary paving. I didn't want that on record.
The temporary pavement, yeah, that's, you go out there it's not the only project that has temporary paving. Also, the city reconstruction project has some paving up on Bush Street and 10th and 11th Street that is temporary paved, and you can tell it's temporary. You look at it, I mean, at least we have a hard surface for the winter, but it is, it's gonna, it's not pretty, and it's kind of bumpy for sure, but it is, it's better for the plows to be working with that than trying to keep a gravel surface plowed, and then you get a thaw in the winter, and how that can turn into issues. So we use temporary paving not only on roadways, but we've used it to create some crosswalk, pedestrian ramps and crosswalks, fill in some sidewalk gaps. And that's all going to be removed and done properly in the spring when we've got good working weather again to get it done. So I do apologize for the inconveniences of that, but that's where we were pushed to, and we got something on the ground to get a hard surface. So any other questions? I had some good questions here. Patty, you have?
Maybe you talk about schedule. Is it?
Yeah, I'll let Mark get back over here and talk schedule. And I think part of, maybe you weren't here when we first started talking about Pier 1, but they made some progress, and that was something I know MnDOT was really pushing to get the main river piers moving along. So
as we kind of talked at a coordination meeting today, that it appears that they're going to be able to meet the schedule requirements and get the tub girder set prior to opening of the river. So that was pretty much the goal for this winter, to get those piers up and out of the water and ready for the girders to be set.
And then that just leads into looking at overall schedule. If that's for decking and everything else that needs to be done, we should still be on schedule for a 2019, fall of 2019 opening. Is that?
We hope so. We believe the bridge will be ready, but we do have the concerns with the settlement period on the fill on the north side.
On the Wisconsin side.
That could have up to a year settlement period. So we're hoping that it'll be shorter, but we just don't know where it's at yet.
So given the bridge progress now, that looks to be like we can get back on schedule and keep that moving. But if that settlement is not done, that would delay moving, building road over there, so we can't really move traffic onto the bridge. We'd have to stay in our configuration that we are right now.
Right.
Going over the Eisenhower Bridge, and okay.
Could you give us just a brief preview of what it's going to be like when the main span is put across the river? The big tubs, are they? Is that one piece? 2 pieces, 3 pieces?
The question is the preview of kind of doing the main span across the river and how that's done. So
the contractors explained to us that there's a large section that goes over the pier, like Pier 1, and they're going to bring those in separately on transport trucks, and they'll lift those into place and set them on top of the pier. There's also pieces that they're going to bring in on trucks, and they're going to build a temporary pier basically near the railroad tracks, and that'll support the tub girders from the south abutment to Pier 1 as they push those out. So they're going to launch them from the south abutment towards Pier 1. They'll be pushed out.
Over the railroad tracks.
Over the railroad tracks, right.
And then over the river, then is that a crane operation where they will lift those up and bolt the sections and kind of work their...
We really haven't. We haven't got a lot of information on anything after Pier 1, so we're still waiting to hear. We know that the pier, the steel that goes from Pier 3 all the way out to Pier 1 will come in on the north side from the Wisconsin side, but we don't really have any details.
You don't have the details on how they're actually going to, their means and methods for building it, but it is in sections. We do know tub girder will be in sections, and somehow they'll come up with a plan whether they're working off. There could be some temporary piling in the river to hold up sections of it while they're trying to make the connection to get the main span in. Yeah.
It's all going to come from our side across the river?
From Pier 1, from the south abutment to Pier 1, it's going to come from the Minnesota side. but everything else is going to
Yeah,
come
so
from the Wisconsin
it's
side.
really going to come from the Wisconsin side, the way they
Majority of it.
explained the majority of it. The one piece, of course, that gets launched or pushed across is over the top of the railroad tracks right by ADM there to get to that first pier that is right kind of on the bank of the river. And then their majority of their material and everything would be coming from the Wisconsin side to get the main span done. Yeah. Good question, though. We're still kind of, the contractor puts those plans together on
Right.
how they actually build it. You know, you have a set of plans that tells you what you want built. Then there's also the set of plans on how you do it and it doesn't fall while you're trying to build it, so.
I remember Terry telling us on a tour, he said, I want to see him do this. This is going to be interesting.
Yeah, yep, yeah.
Just kind of the magnitude of it, they submitted their plan and their calculations for this work. Well, the calculations were 900 pages long, so.
They're structural calculations because you have to support things while you're building things as well, so. Good question, very good. Anything else?
A piece of curiosity.
Yep.
What's sort of the average work crew working on a regular basis? How many people?
Question is the work crew on a regular basis. And I know that fluctuates depending on when the electricians are here and different things. But
Right, and time of year, you know, it fluctuates too. We're down quite a bit right now compared to what things were during the middle of the summer. But, you know, I'm not really sure. I think Zenith Tech has probably around 20 people here right now, and I think the grading contractor probably has maybe a dozen at the most, and then the lighting guys have a couple, and that'd be about it for
right now. And then
Right now.
add on all those and then add on the utility crew with another 6 or 7 or something like that when the utilities were going in. And then,
Bituminous paving. You probably have a dozen people on their crew here doing things.
yeah, there'll be times there'll be, 70 guys here, 80 guys, depending on the subs that are here, signage, traffic control subs come in to move signs around, to move barricades. So yeah, it's a good work crew, but like you said, it's down right now, of course, because you're really kind of working on the piers.
Yeah, the grading work is just about done except for some
Yep.
minor stuff right now during the cold weather.
Some of that fill that you were talking about with the flagging operation that needs to be done. But yeah, so it does fluctuate, of course. Yep, good question. Anything else?
Do you have any looming concerns? Are there any things that are kind of hanging out there that you are not worried about, but are something that could delay?
Question, is there any delays or concerns that we have right now? I know the river piers were, and I think
They
we've
seem
in
to
a
be
better
coming
position.
along.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
I think the only thing that would be a big concern is if we have several flood events again during the
Yeah,
summer where it
that's-
affects the work on the Wisconsin side on the gradings up there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, is high water can be something that can throw everything off schedule-wise. And it does seem like the water's high and stays high a lot longer than it ever used to. You know, we used to bank on being able to have really low water this time of year, and it seems like that's not the case anymore, so. But we'll work around that.
Any progress on naming the bridge?
No progress on naming the bridge. Actually, there is progress on it. It's not getting renamed. That's interesting you brought that up. We found out kind of in the 11th hour when we were putting a committee together to kind of work on possible names. We found out that the bridge was not actually named the Eisenhower Bridge. It was in legislation that it was the crossing in Red Wing is the Eisenhower crossing. So there's the progress. This one will be called, the Eisenhower Bridge and continue to be based on that finding. So that's where you understand it as well, Mark?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So.
It's funny because I don't think I ever heard anybody that knew it was called the crossing in Redmond.
Yeah. So that's what it was actually written into legislation. So.
It's a small detail, well, in the future, but probably there ought to be some recognition of why it's called the Eisenhower crossing, I think Eisenhower Bridge or something.
Sure, yeah.
Plaque or some display or.
Yeah, the comment was why it's called the Eisenhower Bridge and should we recognize that and put something, I think that's definitely something that that we could look at and put together, but that's a good point. Then people understand here's the reason, here's what happened back in the, when Eisenhower visited and dedicated the original crossing here. Not the original, I guess the second crossing in Red Wing. So, but it's a good point.
We can probably talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah, we can talk about that tomorrow at our PR meeting with our team. So, good questions today. Yeah. All right. With that, I guess tune in. Let's keep it. Let's keep it going through the winter here. I think there's.
That's fine.
Yep. We'll be on again the first Tuesday of the month. What is the date there we got then?
Maybe the second Tuesday.
2019.
Is that going to be?
I think the first is the first.
Is it the first? That's what I was wondering. So maybe we're already off on that. I was just going to look that up.
January 2nd is no, January 1st is the Tuesday.
Yeah.
So
We're going to schedule that for Tuesday, January 8th. How's that?
Yep, that works for me.
Okay. Good. We'll put that on and be back in here for another update. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.